All right. Hey, welcome everybody. Excuse me as I'm on the road and have really strange background effects, but here we are. Joining you from sunny Las Vegas as I'm at the AWS reInvent show here. But the show must go on. So today for our masterclass, we're talking about framing the shift. So as you are scaling from small or medium-sized or even all the way to large ecosystems, from hundreds of partners to thousands, or from just starting out with your partner program to tens of thousands of partners. So whatever stage that you're at, we want to talk about how you shift and how you need to have different levels of maturity and what that looks like from a couple of experienced folks. So with me today, I have Lauren, who is the founder of partnership specialist that's focused on strategy, relationship development, and activation and enablement. And she is joined also by Megan, and she's the partnerships lead North America, and she's focused on strategy and operations. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thanks.
So to tee it off, we like to have just a good informal discussion on these. And I think we have some visuals to go through, but Megan, I believe you're going to kick us off here.
Yeah, thank you. If we can jump over into the next slide, there we go. So to help orient the conversation today, when we're thinking about growing partner programs, we really wanted to break it out into 3 primary stages. And so you're going to see this triangle kind of make its way through the presentation here. At the end of the day, these stages will mean different things to different people. So launch, you might be looking at 1 partner, you might be looking at 10. Large ecosystem, you could be talking about tens of thousands, you could be talking about 100. The bigger takeaways for each of these is really going to be the priorities and the challenges, and then some of the indicators that you're ready to continue to mature your program and move into the next stage. And that's really where we want to focus a lot of the discussion and then conversation following. So with that, if we can go on to the next slide, I'll kick it over to Lauren.
Thanks. So starting first with your sort of launch stage of your program. So that's launch and probably early growth for many of you. Your priority is really to prove out like one motion that's going to work. So what does that mean? That means say it's referral or co-sell or co-market, and that's each one of those is one motion. Which of those could work for your business and how could it work? Testing commercial models, things like that, to ultimately understand is there something to scale here, and am I deriving value from it? And what do I mean by prove? Proving means that you can get to a repeatable value exchange with a critical mass of partners. So when we talk about activation, often we're sort of defining it by, okay, 1 referral or 1 lead or 1 closed deal or 1 API call, whatever it is, 1 integration built. And I think that to prove that there's a motion there, we actually want to get from that initial activation to that sort of repeated, consistent version of that value exchange. And that's really the goal of this launch phase. Now, one of your also like big priorities is to bring everyone along the journey with you to understand the return on investment. So there's a lot of skepticism about partnerships, or even just a lack of understanding of what partnerships as a channel or as a can deliver an organization. And so it's our job to communicate back to our organization and especially our executive team and especially the CEO. Is there something investable here? And if there is, what should we invest to get what result? And starting early with that conversation is really important, because for the first 6-12 months of your partner program, it's not going to look all that exciting. It's going to look like you've got a few referrals here and a few partners active, and you're starting to see some really interesting results. But ultimately, you're not saying, there's $30 million coming through this channel, and so obviously we need to staff it. So it's really important to start telling the story of the momentum you're building, what it means, what the opportunity is if you were to invest more based on these metrics we're seeing. So that's really important in this sort of early stage. Now, to accomplish this, you need to have a really clear idea of your ideal partner profile, so your IPP, and the mutual value you're going to exchange. So the reality is that not all of our organizations are set up to deliver the same value back to partners. So like you might say, well, we want leads. We can't deliver leads to partners. So what does that mean? Does that mean that maybe it's too early to accomplish a referral program or a co-sell program or a co-market, whatever that means for you. So in this phase, what we want to do is essentially identify, like, what are the partners that we work with that derive the value that we're looking for, that we can actually give value to and motivate. And so that's really the need here. And to do that and to prove emotion and figure out how emotion can work, we need to track what's going on and what's delivering value and get those feedback loops going. So ultimately, this is all about understanding, like, the levers that we can pull to gain some impact or gain a motivated partner or change something that moves things in a direction. What that could look like is really simple reporting, dashboards, Excel spreadsheets, whatever you're able to accomplish at an early stage. But then also feedback loops through the partner. So simply asking the question, what kind of partnership works for you? Is this partnership working for you? Are you getting value from us that is actually meaningful for you? Is there anything you need from us? And the answers to those questions are ultimately what will help you understand how to build a motion that's going to work. Then you also need to be more hands-on than you would be in a scaled program. So as much as it takes a lot of time, it is really important before you get to that first deal with partners to invest a lot of time with hands-on enablement or onboarding, especially in this early stage. Reason being, relationship development. People want to work with people they like. They'll invest if they like you. And ultimately, you're better able to tell them a story and to work with them in a way that's meaningful on a one-to-one basis more easily than in a scaled program. And ultimately, you also need to understand these companies that you're working with at such a deep level that you can build out the enablement that they need. You can understand what their salespeople need, and then you can take that back. So it is really part of that feedback loop and that ultimate relationship development. And you'll do things a lot at this stage that don't scale, and that's okay. But you do want to think about, okay, what in this could I make more efficient? So could you provide yourself some email templates? Could you provide yourself some, other templates for, reviews or other things like that as activity increases? Can you build in some kind of partner sign up process that helps you activate partners in the beginning and understand who they are really quickly? Just things like that. But ultimately, there's a lot of things you're doing right now that work that aren't going to scale. Challenges wise, accomplishing the priorities at this stage is challenging. So the biggest challenge is like the goal itself. But building the ship while sailing, like, you have no resources, really no tool, like very limited tools. Everything is manual. You're doing a lot of work. And it's really hard to do all that and then document all the processes and document all the things you need and keep people on the journey. And it's a lot. You wear a lot of hats. You stretch in a lot of directions. And usually this stage is managed by like 2 or 3 people. So all that to say, your core challenge is just really being an entrepreneur and building a business within a business. It's like that early founder problems that come up. There's also this channel confusion that leads to channel conflict that seems to happen. So both a challenge and also a marked inflection point for you to understand, like, hey, there's something here that needs to get leveled up, is that people on your organization are not sure how to work with partners, and the partners aren't sure how to best work with you. So a good example of that is you're doing a co-sell motion. You say, Kate, deliver a lead or like register a lead through our sign-up form, and that's how you refer us a deal. Well, when can they expect to hear from the sales team? How quickly will the sales team engage with that lead? Do you lead the deal or do they lead the deal? Will they keep you informed along the way or not? And so these things create confusion. And ultimately, it's on both sides. The sales team's like, well, I don't know if I should be doing something with that lead. I don't know how I should be including the partner. I don't really know how to work here. So that's where it becomes confusing. And then there's the attribution piece. So, who brought it in? If the sales team was already talking to them, but the partner has more influence, and the marketing team ran a campaign that ultimately drove the lead to the sales team. So like, you can see how until you have some rules of engagement and some attribution sort of guidelines, it's really hard for everyone to understand what their contribution is. And ultimately, a lot of us are employees in a seat trying to make sure that we're doing a good job. And it's really hard to understand what your impact is, and also make sure that, things that you're doing are being attributed to you in the company. And so that becomes the conflict piece. Other things you'll see when it's time to scale up. SLAs are slipping. You used to be able to get back to partners as the partner manager within a few hours. Now it's a day, now it's 2, 3, a week, a couple weeks. And so the experience is failing for partners. They're not getting the information they need. Same with sales. Deals or leads that were submitted, they used to get engaged with right away. Now it's a few days, now it's weeks, maybe never. And there's a really interesting thing that happens there. Deals start to slow down or they die. And so you can see that if you're tracking what's going on, and that's a really good indicator that it's time to level up. There's performance differences that are pretty obvious. You start to see who your top 20% of partners are, maybe a top 5%. You start to see that, okay, if you invested more time in certain accounts, then you might get more positive return than if you did in other accounts. And then your activation rate might start to slip as well at this point. More activity, more partners, less time for each of them. Maybe some partners aren't active or activating at all. And sometimes that's an indicator that what you're providing for onboarding enablement doesn't fit. So bringing us to the scaling stage, if you go to the next slide, please. Your priorities are effectively to manage all the data and all the partners in a different way to help manage some of those breakdowns. So when we have a more scaled program, we probably have several different profiles of partner that have joined. So you start a referral program and you think that it's going to be all affiliates. Well, there are some affiliates, and the link that you provided them through your sort of affiliate tool works for a little while, and now it doesn't, because now you have consultants and service providers and technology providers all in the same program, and they're all receiving the same information, and they're all getting the same enablement, and it doesn't work for them. So it's time for us to identify what those profiles are and deliver the things that they need to activate. And the same thing with tiering. When it comes to performance, that's one aspect that tiering helps organize. So higher value partners may warrant higher touch engagement from you and your team. And also when it comes to new partners, a high potential, high value partner should be sort of guided through the program in a different way than someone who's maybe not a fit to help you achieve the goals that you have. Tiering helps you really identify who those partners are and bring them through a journey with you that's motivating, but ultimately helps you organize things on your end internally as well. For activation, tiering can be really important because when you don't spell out what the opportunity is and how to get there, it can be hard for people to imagine. So especially in scaled programs, teams will come in and say, oh, well, yeah, I'd love to get involved, but I can see that you already have these like 15 or 20 top partners. Like it's going to take me years before I'm there. Is it worthwhile for me to invest? And you can help them see what is worth investing in and what they get along the way if you build out a tiered program, or at least some kind of journey. At this stage, it's also really important to start standardizing and systemizing the things that you're doing. So whether that's onboarding, enablement, activation processes, once you have more than one partner manager, everyone does everything a little bit differently in different geos. And so it's important to try to organize all that talent and skill, but deliver a more consistent experience with things that we know work. So taking away guess games, taking away some of the things that make it hard for us to understand what to do every day, and delivering playbooks and things like that for our teams to actually action on. At this point, you also want to start thinking about CRMs, PRMs. How do we organize our partners and data in a way that helps us run our program, gets us the data that we need in a way that's ingestible, and gives us insights to make decisions, and ultimately gives our partners something to interact with in some ways too. I'm not saying that partners love a partner portal, like a lot of them don't, but at some point we're at a scale where we can't do one-to-one engagement, and that's another priority here, is moving from that one-to-one activation to a one-to-many. We can't support every partner in the same way when we have 100 partners, let alone 1,000 or 10,000 partners in our programs. And so these tools help us deliver a baseline experience that everyone can take part in, and then scale and modularize what we're offering to suit the profiles and the partners that are through the program. So on that note, there's a really big partner ops component in this scale stage, which I'm excited for Megan to share some of her thoughts with you, because she's just the operations person queen.
Project.
The reality is that at some point there's also like a real strategic way to work with partners that's hard to accomplish unless you have ways to understand people's specializations, the verticals they serve best, the product lines they support best, the regions they're in, and how we work with them. And so introducing that level of sort of more complex understanding of partners into our internal processes is really important, and operations people make that make sense.
Yeah, I think one of the big things at this stage as well is you're starting to find that you're not testing everything with the ultimate goal of just getting that traction and making something work. You're actually starting to need to understand, of everything that we've done, what is it that's working, so we can make investments in the appropriate places and really drive the results that we're hoping to see, whatever that might be. And so with those partner ops individuals, and again, at this stage, it's still probably 1, maybe 2 people, but it really gives you that chance to both understand what are the trends you're seeing with your partners and how can you leverage the strengths of that, and then also identify the opportunities via current challenges. But then also with your own current funnels or the trends that you're seeing within your own pipeline and the results of the program, those are areas that those partner operations people can surface for you so that your team is then able to go action them, implement new projects, or lean further into things that are working really well, and ultimately help you move faster in the right areas that make sense for your business and your team and your partners.
Yeah. So to that point, when we think about activation at scale, so I think sometimes it's a bit of a bucket idea, like we have all these partners signing up and not all of them are activating. And that's the challenge that we've identified. But what the opportunity actually looks like is we have all these partners joining our program or signing up, and we know we want to work with certain types of partners because we have these certain goals. And so we actually don't necessarily need to activate all partners, just the ones that are going to help us the most and that we can deliver value. So when you are able to identify through partner operations, what are the things that we need to look for and identify in those partners, and how can we identify those things as they come in? That's one piece. And then the second piece is like, how do we align it to the goals of the company and make sure it's all seamlessly going? So that's really the job here, is kind of cutting through the noise of everything at this point and being really focused on like, what is it that we're actually trying to accomplish, and not trying to serve everyone, essentially. Needs-wise, you need data visibility and dashboards. It's boring, but it's your best friend. Getting insights to make decisions is what you need. There's a lot of data and a lot of dashboards at this point, probably data in many different systems, which leads to one of the major challenges, which is data fragmentation. I have had many a time where I've gone into several different tools to get enough information to build a high potential partner list for me to go get or to understand who to work with. And that takes a lot of time. So, and sometimes that data isn't necessarily maybe a little bit stale, not necessarily super accurate. So this is a really big need and also a challenge in this stage. Modular enablement, as much as it sounds like a nice idea, it can be challenging because you need to make your programs that you're providing partners, so enablement being onboarding and enablement ongoing, needs to deliver the right information, the right time to the right partner, and in a way that's scalable, but also tailored. And so that's really the challenge here, is trying to figure out like how much complexity do you create in your system to ultimately deliver that. So a good example is you have a core market that you're more established in as a company, and you have lots of partners in that geo. And then you're like, okay, well, actually we want to expand to Europe. But the product in Europe is different. Your market share in Europe is different. Your brand awareness in Europe is different. And the partners don't really know you, and they're not getting asked by their clients about you at all, whereas in other geos you are. And so how do you activate those partners looks very different than how you activate partners in your core geo. And so how does enablement program and onboarding program change and scale and get organized inside your program internally? And there's can be a lot of really fun fragments of quality and a lot of reinventing the wheel and things like that happens, a lot of inefficiencies. And then another big need is the cross-functional alignment. So product, marketing, sales, exec, pretty much support, pretty much everyone has to be in lockstep for how we work with partners. They are both a secondary customer and a channel of sorts, but it's like a motion on top of our existing go-to-market motion or our existing go-to-market structure. And so there's a lot of alignment between teams that is necessary if you want to extract the value that you are trying to get. So, you want to activate a partner, and the sales team gets the first lead from that partner, but because of some internal challenges, the communication breaks down, that partner has a bad first experience. Well, they're probably not going to submit many leads after that. Or if, partner does co-marketing with the marketing team, they drive a bunch of SQLs to sales, but for whatever reason, those SQLs don't get actioned on in the right way, and the partner doesn't really see the value of doing it, or it's not clear who's reaching out to those leads afterwards. There's a lot of breakdowns that can happen there. So everyone needs to be in lockstep. And then there's this governance aspect, also super boring, but when you have many partners in your program, you need to ensure quality, there's no fraud, that there's no bad actors, because ultimately it's a community of people and there's a lot of things there. But also there's legalities with third parties and for them working with you, and everyone has to be delivering what they said they're going to deliver and working in a good way. So there's a governance aspect there. Talked about some of the challenges already. But at this stage, you'll also get something interesting that happens, which is, I see the value this motion is delivering, but what about this piece? What really is the value of partner managers, for example? What do they do all day? Do they really need to be doing all that? Are they just expensive dinner people who are, whining and dining everyone? And so the ROI story starts to become more complex. Like, it's not just about, okay, we can deliver this program and it costs this much. And this piece is important because it does this function in the program. This piece is important because it does this function in the program. Before I get Megan to tell us about what you'd see before the next stage, I see a question. You mentioned that data fragmentation is often a partner ops challenge. What are some ways to combat that? Maybe Megan, this is for you.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day with the data fragmentation, the reality is it's going to happen at some point, regardless of how well you plan. And so it's really understanding where are your teams going to find their data and what are the limitations of those things. And so then trying to build out the preferred systems or the best tools for your business so that the key information at least is in the same place. And so people can access their win rates, their lead volumes, their partner health or growth scoring, whatever kind of models you have, trying to isolate and identify, okay, what are the 3 or 4 that we need our teams to be looking at every single day to make our business and our partners successful? And if you can try to streamline some of that into one place or find a way that it's very easily accessible for your teams, that's really going to help. And then some of that additional data that probably does live in spreadsheets or other systems or other tools, then you can start to find different ways to build that out and also make that more accessible. But again, the reality is it will at some point almost certainly happen. And so really understanding your key data points, the things that you absolutely need to be focused on, is going to allow you to then find the most effective ways to centralize those for the largest number of people.
Yeah, that's been definitely a message from a platform provider standpoint, where we've been beating the drum of data centralization for a bit, because we've seen a lot of companies we work with where it's just, our training information's over here and then our marketing information's over there. Okay, you need one place that has all this information. Chasing all that's a nightmare. So that makes a lot of sense.
And our executive teams are looking for the one place they can go to understand what's going on too, right? The last thing you want is the CEO to go, let's peek under the hood here and see what's driving all this great value for me. And then they go, I can't see anything. Where is the report? How do I know what's going on? And you're well, actually, here's these 5 places that you need to go. That person doesn't have time to do that,
Yeah, it's a big piece of being able to prove that ROI, right? If you have to give 5 different reports, that's a mess. So trying to level up and show that ROI to the executive team, data centralization is super important in that.
Okay, so before we talk about the other inflection points, just quickly touch on comms. So it's a reality that in our program, there's several aspects of our program and our business that we want to communicate to partners, and we want them to know about us, and we want them to be informed about. There's also things our partners need to tell us that we need to be informed about too. And at this scale, it's challenging to make sure that we're delivering information in the places that partners are listening and also ingest what they say to us in a way that the business can hear us or hear them. So some things that you'll see is, okay, well, before we used to communicate all of our product news and emails to partners, but now we have so many partners and we don't actually provide all of them partner managers. So where do we mass communicate these updates in a place that is actually going to be seen? And when people can't see those updates, you miss opportunities like, oh, I didn't realize that you added this entire product feature that makes it possible for 3 of my clients to use your platform now, and I've been waiting. Well, that's a breakdown. The other one is when you communicate like transactional business information that changes the program. So our rev share is changing. Our program tiers are changing. These are like very important and in some ways legal terms that are changing. And so it's important everyone gets to hear them. But sometimes when we're communicating changes that might be reacted to differently by different partners, they need a way to tell you some feedback. And so if they don't have a human being connected to their account, where do they go with that? Support? And what does support do with that? How do we collect that information? And then finally, this is where a lot of companies start bringing in like partner advisory boards. Who's closer to your product than a sort of secondary customer type that has not only uses your product to do their work, but also makes a business around your product and also, serves your joint customer. And so getting feedback through some way that is ingestible by the organization is important, because at the scale, you can't just go, okay, what support tickets do we have that have any morsel of product feedback for us that's reasonable, and how do we quantify that? So this is where there's so much information and also more disconnection from people to people. And so you start to have those breakdowns. All right, Megan, take us through inflection points.
Yeah, so where this all starts to ladder up to the suggestion that you're probably moving into a next phase of growth, into more of a large ecosystem approach, is you're going to start to find that adding more partners isn't actually driving incremental results. So you might still have partners signing up to your program and starting to engage, but it's not ultimately impacting your top line in most cases, or not in a meaningful way. You're also going to have partners who are building more of their business around you and your organization, but they don't necessarily have the same level of access that folks in that more launch or early scaling phase had. And so they're asking for deeper integration, trying to find ways to be closely aligned to you. And frankly, in a lot of cases, your systems don't or cannot support this in a meaningful way at this stage. You're also then going, as we were speaking to partner operations, you're seeing more of that need for specialized roles. So as in the launch phase, you can't manage partners and launch co-marketing and build the operations and support the systems. You're really going to start seeing a very strong need to have people who are skilled in those particular areas come in and take ownership of those elements of your program. If we can jump over into the next slide then. What that will ultimately mean is you're really starting to see a maturation of your program where you're needing to focus on aligning your internal outcomes. So whatever you've determined as your top level goals for your organization, it might be starting to move away from what was the key phase of growth and priority in the launch phase of ultimately supporting partner growth and opportunity in the program. And so as you're having more deals come from partners, or a larger contribution to your revenue, some of those internal outcomes are starting to shift away. And so you're needing to find ways to keep those two things together and really stay true to the program itself. As we mentioned, you're also continuing, frankly, to cohort partners. So it's not just segmenting or tiering. Now you're also needing to understand from a partner experience perspective, what are our opportunities to communicate primarily one-to-many? So leaning into a lot of those marketing motions and doing lifecycle marketing and things like that, versus where do we want to go one-to-few and maybe host an invite-only webinar or have smaller populations of partners that we're targeting for specific campaigns. And then where does it make sense to really continue to maintain those one-to-one engagements? So even having deeper and more meaningful connections with your partners. And then lastly, needing to balance program growth and depth. So you're continuing to grow your program, bring in new partners, get the word out there. That remains a priority and a really big driver of growth. But you're also needing to lean further into depth. So how are you getting partners to do more or maintain their level of engagement with the program over time? Because as you mature through the program, and it's been around for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, if it's not continuing to evolve and get deeper and more meaningful for those partners that have been there from the beginning, what's ultimately going to happen for many of them is that it'll start to stale for them. So you're needing to keep that depth component. From a needs perspective, Lauren touched on this a little bit, but you need those effective one-to-many communication channels. So you might start to find just email isn't going to work because a lot of those emails might be outdated or you're no longer reaching the correct people. And so making sure you're doing an audit of some of those communication channels to ensure that what you have is actually driving the results that you need. And if it's not, you're able to adapt quickly and either find other channels or potentially find different, more meaningful ways that you can connect. You're also going to need really flexible data models and AI tools, again, just to support the growth. So as your teams are getting bigger, your executives might not be as directly in the weeds with you in the program details, and they're needing to understand, is this still successful? Where are we seeing opportunity? And so ensuring that you have those data models that people can get into, find the information that they need, but still in a controlled way where they're aligned with level goals and metrics is going to be really critical for you to be successful. With the role specialization that we mentioned, you're also going to start to need or have already needed dedicated partner marketing resources. So again, really having experts in that field that can both support your partners with probably trying out a new motion for their teams as well, and really starting to master that so that they are able to reach their growth goals. You're still seeing what you're needing from your business as well to achieve your growth with partners. And then one of the ones that I actually think is maybe the most fun to really dive into is building out scalable models to help ensure that you're growing in ways that are meaningful to your business. So there's a million and one ways to do this. One that I really like, you're going to see here with the RFY. What that stands for is your reach, frequency, and yield. So if you're looking at a growth mechanism, there are different levers that you can lean into to help you get there. And so with the RFY model, one of the ones that I've oriented to in the past is with reach, you're really looking at who are your active partners and how many of those do you have? So you might have a program of 10,000 partners, but you might have 500 that are really, really in the weeds, or 1,000, and whatever that looks like. Those are your partners that are active. You can try to increase that number. So maybe you want to go from 500 to 700. You can focus a lot of your efforts into that. And at the end of the day, that will help you hit whatever growth goals you have. On the frequency side, a different model is you can try to get more out of the partners that are already active in your program. So if everyone is, of those 500, they're referring one deal per person, maybe you want to try to get some of them up to 2. And again, that's going to be a different lever that you can invest in, and it will help you get there. A yield perspective can be a little bit more complex and probably even further through in the large ecosystem phase, but what amount of revenue is each partner contributing, and how can you potentially increase that? Is it through cross-sell? Are there different motions that you can lean into? How do you ultimately, if the average deal size is $50,000, how do you get that up to 60,000? What are some of the areas there? What's nice about this is it's a scalable model that's easy for people to understand. But at the end of the day, if you focus on any one of those things, it's going to support you in your growth. And so you have the flexibility to either have specific roles that are focused on reach versus frequency versus yield, or you can use it as maybe for one quarter, you focus only on reach. And that's kind of your gold star metric. So interesting ways to think about that. From a challenges side, you're going to have data debt. Unfortunately, I have never found a way around it, but with a lot of your legacy systems. So maybe you lived in Excel spreadsheets for years and you're starting to find some data debt there where partner information is outdated. You might find the same if you have a CRM or a PRM. It's a lot of work to keep those updated. The biggest call out here is it's critical that you are staying on top of it and not letting it get out of control. So implementing audits against it, identifying where there are challenges, and finding ways that you can help improve that. Attribution also doesn't go away. You're probably thinking we're back on the launch slide here. A lot of these things start to stale with your program as you move further and further along. And so you might be finding a need to move from single to multi-touch attribution or something in the middle so that you're effectively capturing the way that people actually buy and sell. And so that might be a big conversation with some of your operational folks as well. And you're probably also running into some partner process adherence issues. So as the programs evolve, it's natural that there are introduced more and more steps for partners. Everyone runs a partner program slightly differently. And so you're likely running into some of those challenges around partners not registering leads correctly, or internal teams maybe not fully understanding how to make the most out of those. And it can ultimately introduce challenges into your pipeline and your growth. Here for inflection points, it's less moving to a next stage and more inflection points for how you can continue to evolve the program. You're very likely going to see some long tail partner attention and engagement declining. Again, as your partner programs grow, the reality is you can't focus fully on every partner that's signed up to the program. And so part of that is normal. And part of that is also something that you're going to want to focus on. So understanding what exactly your benchmark is for this is just expected churn versus this is something we want to lean into. You're going to continue to have partners requesting visibility into roadmap and program plans. That's actually a great sign, and it's a big challenge for understanding the best way to implement that for your partners. And then lastly, as partners starting to feel like they're more just a number in the program as opposed to someone that really is getting all of the resourcing that they want. This one is a challenge, but really goes back up to that initial priority of understanding your one-to-many versus one-to-few and one-to-one engagements. There's probably opportunities to have some variety of each of those three for most partners in your program, maybe not all, but starting to think through exactly what that looks like and where those opportunities are is helpful.
So how do you do that cohort assignment of the one-to-many, one-to-few? Is it based off of how profitable they are, how active they are, or what are the usual metrics that you go off of?
It's a great question. The frustrating answer is I think it really depends. But at the end of the day, from a one-to-many, you're going to want to land your partner experience because to an extent, partners are engaging with your program in a relatively similar way across the board. So from the moment they sign up, what do you want their first impression to be when they've been there for 6 months or when they've hit a key milestone? What should that look like and how can you build some consistency there? On the one-to-few side, again, different ways to cut it out, but an interesting one is, are you finding folks that are either extremely good at one thing and you want to try to make them better? Or alternatively, and one that I really enjoy leaning into, are you finding that there are drop-off points or areas where you're seeing certain partners are maybe not meeting the same level as other folks in the program, and using that as an opportunity to come from a place of empathy and really help your partners grow. So to the extent that it is something interesting to them, saying, this is something we think is an opportunity and we're going to help train you up to get there. Also really interesting, also really impactful. One-to-one, of course, it is a higher investment. And so probably more often than not, seeing that aligned in some way to revenue is going to make it a much easier decision for your business to approve. But at the same time, there are still opportunities for you to do some unscalable or less directly aligned ROI things to see, can we change the narrative here and really help partners get there?
I think one of the things that is really healthy at any scale of program is just ensuring there's still space for experimentation. I think the reality is that even if you have like a framework to work from, not every business has the same team, skills, resources, et cetera, and not the same partners and not the same culture around partnerships. And so like, what playbook might work for you might need to be slightly different or doesn't work at all. And so we still need room to figure out, if we did this, then what? And I think that it's harder to do when you don't have a lot of resources, of course, but it's still really important at every stage to make sure that you're still learning. Because how else are you going to get ahead? You go only so far you can go with existing roadmaps, really.
Yeah, I had somebody ask me as I was walking around the booth of this show, why is it so hard for this partnerships thing to work? We tried building our own partner portal, and why is it so hard to do all this? And I think that's the answer is, while there are some similarities and things that we can share that are common between partner programs of businesses, it seems like there's always going to be those unique business needs that you're gonna have to figure out on your own in some way.
Yeah. I think like in my experience, it comes down to like kind of two things. These were relationships, regardless of what level of scale you're at, they're relationships, and they all look a little different. Some of the more close-knit ones are like marriages, and some are more like acquaintances. And we all have the experience of having our close family, our friends, and then people we know for work. And I think that is a healthy way to think about partnerships. None of those people you can control. None of those people work for you. None of those people want the same things you have. They're not motivated the same way you are. We're all very different. And so in some ways, the reason it's so hard is because there is so many differences. And how do we sort of work with those things in a scalable way is like the major challenge. The second thing is follow through. I think that a lot of programs are unfortunately set up to fail in that everyone is very well intentioned. They set out with, even sometimes like the very, very preferential commercial models. They go out, they find the partners, everyone's excited, but then there's this big drop off that happens. And it's across the board, no matter what scale you're at with new programs or if you're expanding programs. And it's just that the teams aren't staffed to continue that relationship in some way, or you're not set up with systems that allow you to continue those relationships and maintain some connection. So, maybe that's actually one thing. It's like the relationship lives and changes. And so how do we build systems that are like react to those changes and consistently changing, and then also like navigate the differences? And yeah, it's like a following a moving target kind of thing.
For sure.
Okay. Well, before we move on, we have like basically like a small framework that we'd like to share around like how you scale activation. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. Activation scales when you do a few things really well. One is have a clear goal, like understand what you're trying to achieve. Laddering down from the company goal is like the best way I've seen work. But ultimately, like what are we trying to do is a really important thing to understand, because that changes who are we going to work with to help us get there. So then next thing you do is you make sure you have a defined profile in mind, or profiles. And so we focus by having the same thing you do with marketing at scale. As you have certain ideal customer profiles, we'll have the same thing in partners, ideal partner profiles. And we do everything aligned to how those partners interact with us and what we can deliver them and what they need, and how we're, identifying how do we bring them with us on the journey. And then you segment. So within those profiles, what do we know? Performance, geo, type, and that also changes how we work with people. And so that segmentation, and then further along, like Megan was saying, cohorting is really important to get to, especially at higher levels of scale with many partners. And then once you have those segments, you engage with them meaningfully. And those engagements don't have to scale, but they can scale in many cases. But when we talk about like the human element and how when that gets removed, activation goes down, it's really because we're trying to kind of write, or like, kind of stroke everything with the same pen or the same paintbrush. And at the end of the day, like I said, like not everything is motivating for the same partners, or like everyone has differences. So how you engage with people meaningfully does change depending on the segment. And so we find out what that is and we deliver on it. And so it's really just that goal, define who you're working with, segment them down to a level that you can understand how to work with them, and then engage with them in a way that's meaningful to them. And that's usually a pretty good way of activating.
Sounds clear to me. Well, this has been very helpful. Thank you. We went a little over our usual time, but I think we answered some questions along the way. But yes, Lauren, Megan, thank you so much for dispelling your knowledge. I'm sure there's many out there that will find this useful no matter what stage of growth they're at. So thank you again, and I'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.